Hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Community Nature Connection Training Institute training today. I'm here with Julia Bogany, and we'll be doing a training on Tongva cultural history. Thank you for joining. As we have attendees joining the webinar this morning, we'd love to hear where you're joining us from and if you're affiliated with an organization. And if you could share your name, go ahead and introduce yourself into the chat box. We can get a sense of who's all here and where you're all joining from. So thanks, everybody. Thanks again for being here this morning. This is a Tongva cultural history training with Julia Bogany, and you're joining the Community Nature Connection Training Institute. So thanks so much. As we have folks joining, we'd love for you to type your introduction into the chat. Go ahead and share your name with us and where you're joining from this morning, and if you have an affiliation with an organization. And welcome, everybody. We're going to get started in just a minute. And while we wait to get started, I'd love to hear where everybody's joining us from. And hopefully you're here in the right place. We're in the Tongva Cultural History Training with Julia Bogany. And this is the Community Nature Connection Training Institute. So I'm glad to see everybody here this morning. Oh. And lots of introductions coming in. We have some volunteers from Community Nature Connection here and lots of folks joining from the ancestral Tongva land in the LA area. So we're about to get started, and we are going to be answering your questions throughout the training. So if you have questions that come up during the training, you can go ahead and type them into the Q&A box. So as you're typing your introductions into the chat box, just be sure to type your questions into the Q&A box, and I'll be monitoring those, and I'll be feeding those over to Julia during the training. And we'll also have time at the end of the training to get to any questions we may have missed. So thanks everybody once again for joining us this morning. As you arrive, go ahead and give us a quick intro in the chat box, your name, where you're joining us from, what organization you're affiliated with, if any. And we're gonna get started. So welcome to the Tongva Cultural History Training. And thank you so much for being here. And I'd like to give a very warm welcome to Julia Bogany, who's gonna lead the training today. Thanks so much for being here, Julia. Take it away.
Okay, good morning. I'm Julia Bogany. I'm Gabrielino Tongva of San Gabriel Mission, and I'm the culture officer for the tribe, and I teach culture in the community. So nice to see you or hear you today. So I'm starting with the key, which is our house. And I know you wanted to learn. So this is made out of raffia, but out of some reed that you use for like your summer furniture in the backyard. But it's called like but it's also called like a throwaway basket. And so this is something, so the key, our key was that I wanted to demonstrate that the plants from the key is willow. And then these were naturally made out of willow when we were a long time ago. Today we use the reed because we do it with large classes. But we use tule to cover it in the homes when you see them, and when tule is not available, we use cattail. But the structure itself, the inside is all willow. So willow is very important to us. So we make also these pine needle baskets that we make to carry our chia in. And if this is made out of pine needles, it's something more modern today, something quick and fast that that we make. And so I was going to show you a willow stick. So I have a story about the willow. The willow is very important to us. We used it for boards, for houses, for cooking utensils. And so for me, I had a lot of sinus problems. And so I found that I started taking some willow bark, and then I only had to take it a month, and then I did a lot with willow. So I found that I stopped getting infections. I did take a sinus pill every 1 or 2 days. I had a sinus infection, but now for the last 30 years, no more sinus infections. So I spend a lot of time with willow and working with it. So I like to do plants that I work and do things with and learning. So I see our sound is not very clear here. So if you're out gathering chia, which is black sage, this is made out of willow also, and kids think that it's like a tennis racket. It's not a tennis racket. It's to gather the chia. So you want the chia balm in the basket. You don't want to destroy the plant and take the flowers. So I don't know, get closer here. So anyways, you tap the chia in the flower, and the chia goes in here. Now, we know that other people are taking chia now for diets, and I always recommend it. We don't take like spoonfuls a day, but just take a little sprinkle on your oatmeal or your salads. I like lemongrass with chia. Is really great cooling drink, and gives you that energy to go through the day in this heat. But it's don't take too much, right? So people wind up in the hospital because they're taking way too much chia, because it expands in our stomachs. So chia does not have a flavor. It's just kind of, to me, I talk about it like it's like tapioca. It just expands, right, like a sponge. So that's the reason I don't want to take so much. So I have a tule doll here that I do quite a bit in when I do presentations with children, and I always tell them she doesn't have a face, and because we weren't teaching our children to be, all in a mirror. So people will say, well, did you look in the river? And I say, yeah, but we didn't sit by the river and just stare at it, right? Like we teach children to be big, and this kind of shows that we're all the same, and there's no importance about what she's like. It's, that's your doll. And I also had a tule boat. I don't know where it went. So I'm going to show you some rattles, and maybe we can have some help there on what do you think this rattle's made out of? So we didn't have no drums in here. We have a lot of rattles. So this is a rattle, and maybe someone could think where it came from, what I used to make it. So, no, it's not a gourd. So,
looks like we've got some guesses for kelp.
Oh yes, it's kelp. So my cousin painted this one. He painted for a museum, but I really like it. And I didn't even know till after I got it that it has two faces. It's made out of kelp. You're ready if I make it. And so the plants I use are mostly things that I can use, that I can make. So we do have, this is our original gourd. This is a coyote gourd. And this is very fragile. So when these are green, they look little watermelons. they grow wild, but we would cut them in half and then it makes the bleach. But we dry, they're hollow. They're not like the regular gourds you have to clean out. So, this is an original. We don't make too many of these because they're so fragile. And usually, if I'm on my potato, I don't try not to set it out too much because kids like to bang them. For some reason, they want them to bang. So that's a coyote gourd. Then we turtle rattles, and children have a problem with that. They say, "Oh no, a turtle, a poor turtle," because they like to have a little tiny turtle. And I said, "Oh, why do you think that? Well, you took a turtle." And I said, "Well, don't you take a whole cow to make your hamburgers?" And then they think, "We do?" And I tell them, what's the difference in you having a cow like hamburger? And we didn't have cows, right? So we had to eat the turtle. And then we make a rattle out of it. So then they kind of get it, but they still feel sorry for the turtle. They don't feel sorry for the cows. For some reason, maybe they don't see them. And then this is ceremonial rattle. The Tongva would have it made, I guess, because it's a ceremonial rattle. But I got this one up north because I just really like it. But the important part are these. Any ideas what these are? Suggestions? Questions? Answers? Okay. Any guesses? Yes, they're deer hooves. So they sound great, right? They do a lot of big jiggling and they're for ceremonial dances. And this is another rattle. And so everything is taken from the earth, right? Everything disintegrates in its own way. Any idea of what kind of shell this is? Yes, hortense. Great. We have some great people out there that know what using. So this is 3. Usually we use 1, but my cousin was trying to do something nice for me, and he actually painted it purple. I don't know if there's sea urchins on purple. I've seen some light lavender ones, but he painted these, and of course the paint's wearing off. But the distinctive sound. On the top we have the Roman shell, and then he has some petals from Catalina, and then here on the bottom he decorated with black walnuts. So I say at black walnuts, we use the outside skin to dye our hair, right? That Clara Wentz used to have to keep our hair shiny. And then, of course, we eat the walnuts sometimes. And then after we eat the walnuts, then we make our dye stains. And so I always say we're true gamblers. So this is a rattle. Do we know? So this is a clamshell rattle, but what do you think is used for the glue to keep it together? There's a quick answer there. You got an answer? Lots of answers. Yes, it's tar. We were so close to the tar pits, right? So we use tar a lot in Tongva culture. So we also ate a lot of good food from the ocean, right? So this is an abalone shell. I have a collection of different colors from around the world, but so this was after we ate the abalone. This is our bowl. So you see where these holes are? Do you think we could put some soup in there? No. So how would we cover these holes? Can you tell me like what kind of ideas you have for covering for these holes here? Tar, very good. And then if the abalone breaks, right, and it breaks really perfectly somehow, it right around this hose, then we use it for a soup spoon. And then you still have this other piece of abalone. So then you make curry with it. So therefore we're using every piece of it, right? We eat the food, the great abalone, and we use it for a bowl, it breaks, and we make curry. So, and we use it for decorating teapots and our dice games. So any questions so far?
We had one question come in about the black walnuts. Is there any preparation required in order to be able to eat them?
Well, it has that thin skin on the outside, and then you can just crack it open, but to eat them. But it's a lot of preparation to make things with, right? Because you don't want the, if you're doing if you're trying to take off that black film from the outside of the walnut, it dies. It's a dye. So we use dyeing for our baskets if we want to use black on it or ink, all those kinds of things. So you want it, so then you would, some people boil them, right? I kind of just use the sander and sand them because that's faster. And you have to wear a mask. That gets, even with the mask, I still get all the little flakes from the outside. But and then you can eat them. They're just like a California walnut. Only it's richer because it has more oils. So it's a healthy walnut. I haven't seen it nowhere in the store. It's only on the trees, and people give them to me. I've never seen them in the store.
Thank you. Yeah, if anybody has any other questions about the rattles or anything else we've covered so far, go ahead and type your questions into the Q&A box. Here's another question that came in. Julia, did you say that the walnuts can be used to make hair dye?
Yes, so the outside of the black walnut is a little skin like, and you boil that and you let it, of course, cool off, and then you just rinse your hair with it, and it just gets and shines your hair. Kind of like sage does also. It'll shine your hair. You can use it as a rinse. So those are things that just made our hair shiny. Right?
Thank you.
Off my little table fell the gourds we use today, the ones we buy and we make our rattles with. So we kind of decorate them, you know, they're pretty fun to do. But you have to clean them out because they're not
we had another, one more question came in about the tar. Was the tar processed in any way, or was it used just as it was found?
It wasn't processed, but it was like after, I mean, you're gonna have to melt it if you have like chunks of it, right? So you're gonna have to dilute it because maybe when you get it, so you have it sometimes in tar mines where it's like a rock and you have to melt it, right? But then you have to, when you get it melted, it's not gonna stay in that form. It's gonna get hard. So then you have to melt it again to use it. So this is a bull roar. Did you answer that? Is the tar toxic? I've heard stories in the South that a lot of people like to use tar for like chewing gum, but they don't swallow it. Right? So I don't know if it's toxic or not. It might be toxic today because they probably add chemicals to it. Like when I do my games, I add glue to it so it dries faster because it takes a long time to dry. Um, I don't have a story about the willow. We have a willow song, but I'm not singer. We do have a willow song. I don't have a willow story that I've seen yet, but you know, it's probably somewhere. I'm sure that it is. So here's this is a bull rower, and current population of Tongva, I would say we have about 3,000 people, and of course a lot of us, and I would say in this Los Angeles basin, which we encompass the entire LA basin. So within that entire basin, I think we have at least 3,000. So like my son lives in Texas, so there's people living in other states. But yes, in the LA basin, we probably have about 3,000 Tonga. So I would say that, you know, we're replenishers. So I have 4 children, 12 grandchildren, and 19 great-grandchildren. They live all over. We live in different communities. We don't have a reservation. We're not a federal tribe. But we just live all over. Not as close as we did when I was younger, where we all lived in the same block. We had like 5, 6 aunties living close by where everybody could go to different houses and after school. So we live a little bit more separated, but some of us still live in the same cities. The Tongva have inhabited this land since the time immemorial. So I know there's several stories out there, but we decided culture keepers to just go to time immemorial. And if you go to my website, I think you got my website, there's a timeline in there. So the only thing that's missing is last year that I need to add that to my timeline. Yes. That is my website. And I started that website to be visible. My great-granddaughter, who's 15 now, was 11, and I ran in Cucamonga Springs in Santa Monica, and she said, how does it feel to be a Tongva woman? I've been the culture officer for 40 years. I said, I feel invisible. And she said, that's how I feel. And then I said, no, you cannot be invisible. So I decided with my students that to open a website. And so that's what I'm doing to show that visibility. I think there's a lot of places you can find my face out there. If you go on my website, you'll see. I started these books on our language. So we take the language classes. And I started books with animals and their names in Tongva. And this summer we're printing, this last semester we just finished them, so we're printing this summer. I did plants and insects, and they have to have a glossary because we don't know all the plants the children went home. And then we also have sources of water. So we try to do all kinds of water that we could think of, even a water faucet, right? Children drinking water. So that, or, you know, besides the ocean and everywhere you find water. And so this is a young man from my tribe. I'm trying to put our children on the covers to empower them toward their college education. So every time I order 100, I give them 10, and they're so excited to get to sell to their families. And they have a little bio inside of who he is. So this is Michael, and he wants to be a comedian when he grows up. So I know when he gets older, he's only 10 now. He won't think about being a comedian, I think, but maybe he will. So, and that's how I encourage my younger generations to go to college. So. Is that all the questions for now?
We have a question. Is there anything that participants of this webinar can do to help you feel more visible?
Um, I don't know how, I think, I don't know, I think just participating, sharing, being part of knowing where we're at, right? Participating things like this webinar. This is new for me. I'll be 72 in a couple of weeks. It's like, you know, I'm growing with the new age of computers. I work with Claremont colleges, so I have students I work one-on-one with, and then I teach in classrooms about the Tongva. And I think, yes, I always say people need to know who they are in order to respect other people and help. Thank you. So it's like, it's not about helping, it's about we learn to care for each other, and we need to, just like we used to have neighbors, and one of my neighbors, always had this story, one of my neighbors about 5 years ago came and borrowed a cup of sugar, and I was so excited I gave him 5 pounds. Because I said, I hadn't seen nobody borrow sugar since I was a kid. So that really, and I think that's that old way of knowing that we borrow from each other, and we share, and we share those stories, and I think that's what's important.
Great. And another question, how can folks purchase the books?
You can get them on my website. As soon as the other ones are printed, will be in there. In my website, I have the books in there. So the first one I wrote was about, because we were trying to visible, right? I wrote about 5 important women of Los Angeles. And thank you. And so the first one was of course, I honored my grandma in everything I do. Now I think in February, I said, hey, my grandma died at 42, and so I've been doing everything I do to honor her. But now I'm doing everything to honor my great-granddaughter, who's 15, and is totally picking up all the culture she started gathering with me at age 2. She's speaking the language, so when you go on my website, you go to the little maps, you'll see that she introduces herself over the LA River in her handwriting that Sako did on because she's a painter with outside the lines, so she did that. And she speaks with me a lot of times on panels at museums and libraries. She's spoken with me. So speaking about what's going on right now, so yesterday I did a piece. I'm more of a thinker than a writer, but I did write an article for the Journal of the West that will be coming out soon about the removal of the statues and things. How can we? So the question is, how did I feel about that? So that doesn't heal anyone, right? If we look at history, I do a walk in Los Angeles. If we look at history, to remove something or take it away isn't what heals people. It's telling the truth, right? When we know the truth of our history that has not been written, that's what heals. I tease people that took the statue down in Alberta Street, and I said, well, that's the first spot I wind up teaching about the division of cultures, and now he's not there. But 100 years from now, that statue will still show up in the map as a dot saying, here was Father Sarah, but it's still not the true history about why. So when people say they're taking things down to help us in honor of the Tongva, I feel that I didn't ask you to do that, right? We all have different ways of learning, and that's why I feel that if we know our own histories, we can respect anybody else's history and understand that we're all in the same world, living together, and how do we do that? It's by respecting each other. That's who we are. Does that help? So, if you're in Koreatown right now, right? Yes. So it's for me. It's all that. So 5 years, maybe 7 years ago now, I decided to. I went and I listened to this. I was at a conference and I listened to this young man speak about how we don't know who we are anymore as far as how we survived, right? And because we're so separated, and so I I decided I wanted to learn to teach from the wisdom of my ancestors. So I started doing a lot more meditating. So I'm saying this time that we're locked up and it's uncomfortable for everybody, right? But it's a time, I think it's a time of reflection on why are we here and what is our job for the better future. And maybe we're giving that time out that we really didn't ask for. Maybe it's a good time to do those reflections, to connect with our not only our families but the people of this earth and how we work together. So the word Tongva means people of the earth, and I think so. A lot of times I would hear this land was stolen from us, and I say it was not stolen. The responsibility of our supported land was taken by, not like it was taken by force, but it was taken by breaking the spirits of the people. Is the question? Are you there?
It doesn't look like we have any other questions at this time, but go ahead and type them in. Oh, let's see. Here comes one. Are there any language resources available?
If you go to Tongva in Facebook on Tongva language, there's 5 words every day.
What's the Facebook page called again?
Tongva language. You can, there are just 5 words every day. If you go to Lulu.com, you can get a phrase book. Kind of like I spilled your milk. What spilt milk looks like, that's a story that we used to read to children. Spilt milk, and it has like shadows of animals and who they are in Tongva. We also have have a language class with Pamela Monroe from UCLA once a month, and I don't speak a lot of the language. I can read and write it. I teach it to my great grands, and they're the ones going forward with it. So I gave that baton to my great granddaughter and said, "Okay, you take it from here forward," because she picks it up quicker than I do. She can speak it.
And a link to the Tongva language Facebook page was shared in the chat for everyone.
Okay. So, and I made games because I taught preschool 35 years. So that's how I felt to teach the language, right? To teach like that's their first language. And so I've done several games. I have like a bingo game. I have a chart where I put all the parts of the body so people can learn them. They're not the things I do on my own. I have set lists. So, and the coloring books. And other people are writing books now on Tongva, so you'll find more and more books out there. So I know I was telling you about these women. So there's the tar pit women, right? The woman they found in the tar pits with her dog. And so she's in the book, and I said, I don't know what the dog looks like because I don't even know he had dogs in. But so my students did the artwork with, I asked them to do silhouettes so that any young person seeing it could see themselves in that silhouette, in that description. So But I have a picture of the tar pit woman that was done by computer, right, of what she might have looked like. And last year I was laminating her picture to put um, in one of my programs, and my grandmother had just sent me a picture of her because I paid for her to get her hair dyed for Christmas. And my daughter that was with me, she said, "Why did Erica put all those polka dots on her face?" And I said, "That's not Erica, that's the tar pit woman." And so then I put the pictures together. So they're in one of my teaching materials to show the DNA going down, right? How strong it is that we would have people that look like our ancestors today. You know, we look like children look like their uncles or their aunties or their grandmas or whatever, but we don't go that far back. And so that was that. That other woman was, the first woman chief of San Gabriel was Victoria Reed. She was at the original mission that was in Whittier. And the story is that we used to laugh because they built it on the river. So every time the flood, it took the mission down. But then there's a big earthquake and it totally collapsed. And so they stopped at Cucamonga Springs in Santa Monica. Father Crispy thought he would want the mission to be there because it's so beautiful. But they wanted it going to San Gabriel. So Victoria Reed came from the original mission. Her father was the chief, and her brother dies there. So she's to become the first woman chief in Gabriel because it was her brother's to become the chief, but he died. So she becomes the first woman chief. So she's a pretty powerful woman to me. And then we have a Susa who's named at Cucamonga Springs, and she's named by Father Crispy Susa, which means blessed miracle, because people would come from all over for her to lay hands on them and heal them. So the story is that when the Pentecostal movement came to Los Angeles, the Tongva already had their healer. She fasted and prayed for her people. And it took me 40 years to find her story. I was doing a workshop at a museum downtown, and this man came from the high desert, and he says, "My ancestors woke me up this morning and said, you got to go meet her." And I don't know why. So he buys my book off the table, and he says, "That's why I'm here. You have a Susan here. I brought you this true story." So he brought me the story that he had in her life. And so that was really empowering to me because the story is Blessed Miracle. And everything, I only knew like one paragraph for like 40 years. That's all I knew. I couldn't find no more on her. But now I've done documentary about her, and so she was truly a healer, and I was in the bed for 10 months. She came to me 3 times, and I never saw her face, but I went back to those places where she appeared to me in dreams, and I took pictures because she's an empowering woman to me. And the other one I have in there, of course, everybody knows Karina, who was the revolutionist. And so she, to me, she's an outspoken woman. So I always say we, as Native women, we don't say we're activists. We say we're here to accomplish the job we're supposed to. So I always say, we don't have the money to stay in jail, go to jail. So we just say we're here to do what we're supposed to do. And that's it. And there's the water. There's this. I taught in a little town anyway. So these people came to the museum. That's where people find me. They said, "Did you hear about the water woman?" And I said, "I don't think we had Spartan's water way back then, but there's a woman that delivered water door to door to the first 10 families of Los Angeles, right by the LA River. So she's important to me." And somebody had sketched, I have a sketch of her, somebody sketched it with whatever they used in those days, like it looks like a pencil sketch. And so she's her to me. So she's she's the first Tongva woman to work for the Department of Water and Power. And there's a statue of her, I believe she's on a gold line and right past the city of Highland Park. So anyways, so those are important women to me. And of course, now I do everything for my great-granddaughters to carry on. We used to skip generations teaching about who we were, but now it's like we're following through, right? We're not skipping generation anymore. So.
We have a question coming in. There are
Centennial. I don't know where Centennial Park is. I would have to look at the map, but if in my website there is a map with names. It's still in progress. There's not all the names yet. I do have all the names in my own books as we start adding them to the map. What was the other question?
Yes, there's a question. We have some volunteers who work with children and present some facts about the Tongva to school-aged children who are visiting the park. Is there anything in particular that you would like them to include about Tongva culture in each lesson that they have with the children?
I do a teacher box, and so in there I have like the 12 steps of preparing the acorns, right? And so it's 12 steps, and along with that, they can write their own stories after, they go process. They could change the order depending on the story they would like to write. But there's 12 steps to preparing acorns. So I do those. I also add the koi duck with the father and the fish, to show them how they fish with the nets, because usually we're really close to water and don't have to go and have a different way of fishing. And I have this game in there, and I have the ring toss game in there for high hand. So when you make a ring toss, they kind of think, several just do a ring toss. But I say, you become a good hunter if you can really do this, and so they really get thrilled about it, right? And they do. So I make a ring toss game with them. I do a lot of teaching on trade. What we traded from, maybe from the mountains to the valley, or from the valley to the ocean, what are the things we are trading in different areas. So I teach it at Mosa Beach in December, and I always teach all about the ocean, because they didn't really want to learn about anything else. They wanted me to only teach ocean. So I have lots of different activities. I used to carry a lot of stuff when I went to teach, so now I just kind of see what the area is and what it is you want to learn for that area.
Thank you. Another question, similar to the abalone and its importance as food and tools, can you speak to the use of sharks and stingrays?
So the sharks that was our sandpaper, right? Stingrays also have a kind of rough. So we use, for sandpaper, we use the lava rock or the shark skin or the stingray, but I don't know if, and the whales, we use their rib bones to make our houses on the ocean, right on the Sunday. So I think Alpine Museum has a copy of one. It's a small one, but it has whale bones instead of willow to make the house. And I'm sure they probably would have used seagrass to do the covering.
And so, speaking of the ocean, did the Tongva build tomols and cross to any of the islands? Like,
so the Tongva built kiosks. The Shumash have Tamils. Tongva have kiosks, and I have an article about anthropology that way back, because we used to have the tule boats, right? The Polynesians came and taught us how when the redwoods sent down were being cut up in Northern California, they would travel across the ocean, and by the time they got to us, they were just small pieces. So they taught us how to make the plant canoes, and so ours is called a tia, and and the Tamil, it has little wings, right? So someone did a mural at the college and said, and put a Tamil, and I said, you know, that's not a tia. And I said, yeah, but the Shumash were visiting today. So I let the artist put it up. I said I didn't want his feelings. I just didn't tell him that wasn't right. I just told him, oh, the Shumash are coming over to visit, because I do a lot of the mission studies, and there was a time when there was 250 Tamils and Tias coming across the ocean. And I thought, I wonder what that looks like to see us trading with that many Tamils and Tias going across to each other, right, to trade it. Must have been a great picture. So I always imagine that picture in my mind, that trade was. Other question?
yeah, I think a clarifying question. Someone was interested in when you mentioned that you were skipping generations with passing on the cultural knowledge.
So I'm not a federally recognized tribe, but I have a BIA number with Bureau of Indian Affairs because my grandmother went and enrolled me as a native, but she dies when I'm 2, so like my brothers and sisters are enrolled. And then my mother didn't really teach a whole lot about who we were, right? And then so then I start teaching, so it skips from my mom to me, and then my children know who we are. My grandchildren know a little bit more, but the great grandchildren, but at least it's not being lost, right? Our history's not being lost. So we used to have only one story of the Turtle Brothers, and I went to teach in Oklahoma City at the university there about healing children that had been molested up to age 13. And it was 29 tribes, and I represented California, and they had such beautiful stories to talk to children. And I came back and I asked my cousin, where are our stories? She said, oh, make them up, you're old. And I said, no. So now I have 300 stories that I want to compile into one book of just Tongva stories. And so that's just going to take me some time. So, but, and a lot of our people are starting to write stories now, so that helps too. They're writing those stories that we had before. Because all our stories are about teaching, right? What life is like and how do we go on.
Another question about the key. Do you know when the first one was built, and are they used anywhere else right now? We know we have one in Franklin Canyon, which is a park where our volunteers work.
I don't know when the first one was built, but I know Shumash still do voyages. And I think the Tongva, we tried one like maybe to do the voyage like maybe 5 years ago. Just from the aquarium to Catalina, but it kind of got a hole in it. So it was good. So it's something that's hopefully someday will come back soon, where we like do those voyages together. It's about finding that place. We don't have a place that we can build or do that, right? So that's the hardest thing.
And do you have any recommendations for learning about how the Tongva interpret the night sky?
So I use, so there's a lot of cogstones, and I believe that the cogstones were like cactus. I think I have a little one. So along, this is the cogstone. So they look like little gears, right? Coming out different kinds of shapes, all different kinds of ways. So they either, so there's a question about what they're about, but I think they gave us direction. I mean, from the, not only the stars, because we didn't just travel during the daytime, but where we could see the sun hitting it. But the star, we have several star stories, and but I think it's also a way of finding where. So it serves as a compass, right, to get you where you are. So at nighttime, you can't see the sun hitting the cogstone, but you can go by the stars. Okay.
So we're caught up on questions now.
So anyways, inside the box I have games for children to learn, and it's kind of like if it was at the park or they're with you, we'd probably be making something, right? I like to do a class called Paints Before Walmart, where we make our natural paint from the from the stones that we use to make paints, and then they get to paint. They make their own kit, and then they get to paint something. I taught in Emerald Bay where it was teenagers and they couldn't bring no makeup or stuff, so they would use the paints they made that morning to do their performance in the evening, and that was exciting to them, right? Because they didn't have makeup; they had to make their own. So I think that's the other one. And the trade, so the trade routes, because we traded the Tongva. I have a story of the Tongva trading with the Mojave people. They were called the runners for trade, because nobody would bother them. They knew they were the people like taking whatever trade was needed. But they found a blue abalone that comes from Tongva territory in Utah. So that's what made me start collecting abalones from different places around the world. So I have a beautiful that I bought up north abalone that's cappuccino brown. You know, we didn't have that color right, but it's so beautifully brown. It's a beautiful brown, kind of more of a rust color. And so when I teach about the ocean, I teach about all those color abalones and how we use them and things and I show them things we make with them. And kids really like them, like to feel them. I have a one, besides the cappuccino brown, is one that's all coral. And the coral is not only on the outside, but inside the shell also. So, and of course, we have different sizes, right? So, any other questions?
That seems to be all the questions. Would you like to leave us with some words to wrap it up?
Well, so to me, I think the way, I haven't had to go do everything myself. I've had several people buying articles or stuff and send them to me. I work with students on one-on-ones. I do 1 year. Last year, I did like 9 dissertations in 1 year. This week, I've had people that worked with me maybe 20 years ago and finished finally. Or a young man just sent me his draft of a book that he did when I did Franklin High. I went to Franklin High School. And he said, I've been following you for 7 years, but I never met you. And I thought, I'm glad you're young. So he sent me the draft of the book. So it's exciting that people kind of keep up with who we are. And even though we're better recognized, there's several stories on us out there. And so right now I'm trying to change the name for in Claremont for Indian Hill, coming off the 10 freeway. You have Indian Hill goes up to the hill to Tongva Indian Hill. You know, I wanted Tongva Hill, but I'd be nice and put Tongva Indian Hill and change that. But I'm doing a lot of water projects and things like that. So writing's kind of just piling up, right? So, and that's how I found a lot of my stories. Places I went to teach at, they would say, "Did you hear this story?" or "Did I see this book?" And I just buy it. I went to a cemetery, Abalone in San Bernardino, in Colton, I think, and had this little tiny bookshelf inside the. It's a cemetery in a little cupboard, and I pulled the book out and I thought, oh, this kind of has some of our stories. And then I waited like 2 years before I ordered it, and I got it for $2 brand new. It was a school book, and it had 5 of our stories. So that was really great to find. So it's just finding treasures, right? I say we're a puzzle is starting to be put back together to connect all of us, and so that's why I work with several of our other groups, because we all have family feuds. So that when we work together, because I said the culture people need to work together to put a complete puzzle to the future generations. And so I think as we work together in community, and that we really, it's important. So at San Gabriel Mission, you're going to see a lot of changes. They've allowed me to go in there and really change the whole. It's going to go back to almost its original form of. We're having different things change there, and we have all the things I make with children in their museum now. Because I said, my ancestors built this place, but they're still teaching us. So it's important to have that there. And there's a lot of things the mission has done. So it's kind of like, I'm not in there. My leader didn't think you're not Catholic, you shouldn't, but I was at one time. But I just confronted him with the fact that if that's a mission, the truth has to come from the mission. And so that's what's happening. So just continue to work together, and we'll see you around hopefully soon somewhere. And there's in my website, there's a place where you can send me a note, and then it sends it to my email. Do not give out my card with my email. That's just the way we do it.
So thank you so much, Julia. This was an amazing hour to spend with you and hear from your vast store of knowledge. And I want to thank everybody for joining. I'm going to send a follow-up email. And so I'll include Julia's website as well as a recording of this webinar. And if you have any other questions or want to reach out to Julia, you can do that via her website. And so thank you so much again, Julia, for providing this talk for us. And I hope everyone has a great afternoon.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye, everyone.